been working on Choreographer for a while, and I realized I don't think I've actually really made an introductory video. I've made plenty of posts on social media and talked about it in other areas, but I should probably make a video just kind of explain my goals for it, what it's going to be, why I'm making it, and kind of what you can expect from the initial version of it. And so I've been using Obsidian to organize my thoughts and put stuff together. And my main idea is I want it to be Godot's blueprints in the ways that blueprints is easily accessible. A lot of artists can go in and make functionality for their stuff if they're doing 3D modeling and they want some basic logic to happen around it. A lot of times I see things like Stylization where they go for Unreal because it's very approachable. You don't have to learn hard traditional scripting programming to get something done. And so the graph and node-based system is a very macro level concept. And all the presets makes it very approachable as well. And so that's my goal with this, is to have the blueprints inspiration, but in a Godot flavor is what I would say. So it's going to be stored as a text file because that's something very important to the Godot community, friendly with version control systems. And so I'm going to focus on that. I want to focus on modularity because if I make a specific solution for a specific problem that's on the macro level, so let's say a first-person shooter controller, because we have clear parallels in Unreal. If I make a very specific implementation, let's say I make it in the style of Half-Life, and that all the things that are from the source engine are going to be the movement controls and the systems for that character controller. If someone comes in and wants to make their own character controller, so let's say they want to make a more comprehensive movement shooter, or they want to make it into a horror game or things like that, it'll be robust enough that my solution can help them get started, and it might even work for their final project. But at the end of the day, they might need something a little more customized. I mean, let's say they want to have multiple states where you could be standing, crouching, and crawling. If I just built it like the source engine, I don't know if that's something I'd add out of the box, and it might be a little difficult to add that to it. So instead, what I want to do is allow for a modularity. With Choreographer, what I'm going to make is what I want to call the standard library, which is a pretty common concept in programming languages. It's just the very core essentials to make things. And then the idea is with different scripts, you can add that functionality together. You can use different bits to make new functionality, and you can customize it for your project. And so one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of times is in my research, I found a lot of people are on teams and they want to be able to expose functionality to some of the artists and designers who don't have as much traditional programming skills. And so I think this is a really good avenue to open that up. So what I want to do is allow people to write code in GDScript, maybe even C# if I can get it to work. I'm not entirely sure yet. I haven't done the research into how hard that would be to add that in, but I would love to do that if it's possible. And so then the experienced programmers on the team can make their own custom nodes, or I'm calling them blocks, for Choreographer to minimize confusion, because they're code blocks and you put them together and make stuff. So they can make custom blocks with custom functionality, custom return types, input and output pins, options on the block itself. And they can create that and then collect it together with several others into a node pack. And each individual script will reference a list of block packs. I get them confused myself a lot. Each script will have its own set of block packs that it depends on. Because of Godot's baked-in resource system, it'll load in the block packs that are required for the scripts that are currently running, and when the block packs are no longer needed, they'll be discarded. And so the way that this will help is if you have only a few sets of block packs that are applicable to certain scenes, let's say you're making Super Mario Brothers levels, and you've got some levels that have certain creatures. Well, their blocks might be specific to them, and they might not come up anywhere else in the game. And so the developers of those blocks can put that into one pack, and they're only dependent upon when that script is loaded. And so then in the other parts of the games, it can be unloaded. And so that'll help kind of minimize the dependencies and runtime cost of different scripts, especially when you're going to have a lot of customized blocks, which ideally that's how it's going to work. Another main focus of mine is to make sure that those block packs can be exported and shared, because I'm not perfect. I can't make every game possible, and I can't make a bespoke solution to every game possible, but everyone working together can. And that's the wonderful thing about community and open source projects is make what you're going to make, share it, help other people. If you need to, or if you want to, you can sell them, but for the most part, I think sharing is what's going to be best. And so I fully expect to see people making their own custom block packs and different specific functionalities that can help people build things. And so for me personally, my benchmark that I'm working towards is a first-person shooter controller for a horror game. And so out of the standard lib and the custom blocks I make myself, I want to be able to make that kind of character controller and some basic logic. If you're following along with Fine Point CGI's horror game series, I'd like to get some of that functionality working in Choreographer. Another important design focus on this is I want this to be able to integrate to existing projects, because most people are not going to start a new project with Choreographer. They might add it in later, and so I want them to be able to use their own scripts as well as write some new scripts in Choreographer and have them interact. And so I'm starting to get it to work currently, and I'm going to have to do more work later, where GDScript can call functions on Choreographer scripts, and it works just beautifully. It's great. And so I'm going to work on that functionality. I'm going to make it interplay really well. And I'm focusing on different ways to follow along the object-oriented structures that Godot has. And a concept that I really like that I am creating for Choreographer is called compositing. And so there'll be the traditional standards of reducing complexity in your graphs, which is making custom blocks through GDScript, or making kind of a macro block where you take one graph and you crush it down into one block on this graph. And so then that subgraph can be instanced on as many graphs as you need. The cool idea I have with compositing is it kind of works like an interface. So all of the functions that are available on the base script, whether or not they're fully implemented, will be available to the script that it's compositing with. And that script can define overrides, or it can call the functions on the composited node or the composited script. And what it'll do is that'll override, and it can call it however it likes. And so what that allows you to do is you can take multiple different components that are composited together to make more advanced functionality, and also follow more of the design structure of a contract-based development. Unlike GDScript, you can make interfaces that say, this script will have this function, and it might not be implemented. There's going to have to be a default implementation, which in most cases I would say returns nothing or returns null, and then that's available and things can call it. And as long as the composited script is loaded properly, it should work. What's super cool about Godot and how scripts are handled is I'm pretty sure I can get it working so that you can composite with any other script. So not just other graphs in Choreographer's language, but also composited with GDScript scripts, maybe C#. Like I said, I have to learn how that would work and see if I can get that working. But I'm really excited at the potentials of this functionality. Once you start compositing things together, you can say, oh, well, this is an item, these are the functions that I want items to have, and then you're not really dependent on any script in particular to have those functions, because if you know it's an item, and that's where I'm gonna have to implement the class inheritance structure. In C++, what you can do is you can extend for multiple classes, and that's specific to the way that C++ handles inheritance. It's different from more recent languages like C# or GDScript. And so I'm kind of making a blend with compositing. There does have to be one single class that the script extends from, and that's what lets it be added to a node. And so I have my Kanban. I still need to add more stuff. I have a few basic elements working, and my current goals right now, actually later today, I'll be streaming. I want to get the editor working because right now it's a little funky. It actually conflicts with the visual script editor at the moment. So that's another thing I'm going to try to look into. And I need to be able to change different settings from that. I want to get some fuzzy search working so that you don't have to spell it exactly right to get the right node. That's one of my pain points with visual script. So I'm going to try to make kind of a fuzzy search for that. Especially since if you're typing fast or if you're not familiar with the names exactly, the fuzzy search will help you find it. I also want to make kind of a basic search engine backend, so there'll be a kind of a ranking that's stored in the project files. That's an idea I have. I don't know if it'll be implemented properly, if I can do it. I'm willing to try if that's something that's interesting, but my thought is that nodes that you use often, blocks that you use often, will get ranked higher in the search. And so when you open up a blank search, it'll originally search by rank, and then the highest rank are the ones that you use the most frequently. When you're searching, it'll do a fuzzy search and the ranking will factor in. You could search for move, and if there's a bunch of different move blocks available, except some of them you use more often than others, the ones that are used more often will come to the top. And so that'll help with kind of repetitive tasks if you're using the same thing over and over. That's something I'll also, if I do implement fuzzy search and if I do implement that ranking, I'm definitely going to be adding that as an editor setting to decide whether or not to do fuzzy search, whether or not to do the rankings, because the ranking will have to be stored on your disk, and so every single project or maybe every single editor instance will have to have that data somewhere, and it'll definitely slow down a little bit. I'm not sure by how much yet. I have to make it to know how much it slows it down by. But I expect it'll slow down the search a little bit, and so it'll take a second to load. I'm sure in the beta stages it'll just freeze the editor for a second, but I have to see how it works. I have to make it. And so I have all that. I'm hoping to get this working soon-ish. I want to have this ready by 2024. So that would be January 2024. That's roughly a year from now. Just a little more than a year. If I can get it done sooner, that's awesome. I'd love that. I need to see how much time I have available based on everything I need to do in my life and school and YouTube and making money through that. So support's always appreciated. I have a Discord server that I made. I try to put links for when I'm streaming in there, and I put polls for different projects. Tomorrow, I'm planning on starting a stream for the Godot community horror game. And so how that's going to work is I'm going to be making a horror game with community that comes into the stream and comes into the Discord server, and we're going to do polls to decide the direction of the game. I have been doing some polls originally, so if you're following me on my socials, you might have seen that. Mostly it seems like the community wants to go for a kind of a Dead Space 1 style game, and so from there we're going to have to make some important decisions, like do we want fully diegetic UI? Do we want enemies to drop items? How do we want that to work? Because different factors will affect how the game plays. And so if we want it to be a pure Dead Space 1 clone, that's fine. But I think there's an opportunity to kind of iterate on what Dead Space 1 did, see if there's ways we could improve on it maybe, or if there's just something interesting we want to try. That's an option too. So I'll try to make builds available for that as we progress. I'm hoping to get some continuous integration set up for that, which, if you're not familiar, is super awesome. I think that's everything I have for today. I'll see y'all soon.